All right. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Stephanie Garner, and I am the parent lead of the Plainfield Special Education Parent Advisory Committee. For those of you who maybe are not familiar with us, our group is a group of parents who meet on a monthly basis to really to talk about concerns, issues, and systemic things that are going on within our school district. Our goal is to make Plainfield the very best place for our students to receive special education services, and we work very hard to work and interact with our administration on a collaborative and proactive basis. And I have found it to just be an incredibly helpful group, and I think that we're doing some great things. So you probably all received in your Parent Square today our quarterly newsletter from Beth Shepard, our Director of Special Education. We do send that out on a quarterly basis, and we do quarterly town halls as well. If there is anyone here today who is interested in getting involved with our organization, we would love to have you. Like I said, our leadership team does meet on a monthly basis, and we talk about a lot of different things at a systemic level on how we can make things better for our students, for our families, for our educators, and for our administration. So if you're interested in joining us, you are welcome to either reach out to Beth directly via email, or if you would like, you could send me a private chat during this meeting today, and I would be happy to kind of add you to our list. So I'll just need your name, your email address, and what school your student attends. So without further ado, the reason that we're all here, we want to talk about special education and safety. So, you know, our district does so much to keep all of our students safe, but we want to share with you today what we do that goes above and beyond what we're doing for all of the other students, right? Because I know that's always, as a parent, my number one worry. You know, how are we keeping my kiddos safe at school? And so Beth has prepared a presentation of things that we're doing in Plainfield. And then for those of you who did submit relevant questions in your registration link, she's going to address as many of those as she can throughout her presentation. But if you don't feel like you got your question answered, or if you think of something additional, you're welcome to type that in the chat box, or we'll have time for questions at the end. And we can turn the recording off if you have anything that you don't want to say on the recording. So without further ado, Beth, it's all to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for that introduction. As you mentioned, we're here tonight to just talk about special education and also, you know, safety in general. So this will be kind of a broad overview, not necessarily student specific, but just what we're doing as a district to support our students receiving special education services. And we will get started here. I just wanted to take a second to share our administrative team here in the district. So Melanie Restivo is our administrative assistant, and her email is listed below. Of course, my information is here. And then Mr. Toby is also the assistant director of special education. So, you know, why now? Why is now the right time to be talking about safety and how we're supporting our students? One of the reasons why we're having this meeting is just like Stephanie said, our Special Education Parent Advisory Council, SEPAC for short, asked for an update on student safety. And I think really just given the time that we live in and also the events that have occurred, you know, with our neighbors around us in Hendricks County, we wanted to address the fact that sometimes the safety meetings that are at our building level don't always kind of dig down and address student safety at a level in which our parents feel supported, and wanted to make sure that we offered this meeting to help support and answer any questions that you all might have. So some of the safety practices that are currently in place, we're going to touch on all of these as we go through the presentation tonight. We will address our crisis training. We'll also address the culture of safety that we have in our school district. We'll talk about staff training, our partnerships with outside resources, and then how we support our students who are requiring maybe emergency evacuation plans or also health and safety plans. So one of the questions that we received as part of our registration link was really related to how we support students in crisis. That could be like a behavior crisis in the school building, and then also wanted to know information about our board policy on seclusion and restraint. So I wanted to update everybody and share the information. We use a system that's called MANT in our district, and we picked this particular intervention system because it is a trauma-informed, student-focused, person-focused system. It's developed and adapted to intervene in a crisis situation. It also teaches de-escalation techniques for all of our administrators and our staff members who are part of our building level crisis teams. It is, like I mentioned, trauma-informed, conflict prevention. It also reinforces that all of the people that are working in our schools have a right to safety. It's really about supporting people and not supporting behaviors. So, what can we do in this moment to help our students feel safe at school? And also, it strives to create a culture that provides emotional, psychological, and physical safety for everyone involved. So MANT is a 2-day training that our staff members on our crisis team go through every year. We have 2 MANT certified trainers in our district, Shauna McLaughlin and Alicia Busby, and they train our administrators over the summer, and then our staff members throughout the school year who require this kind of training. Day 1 is all about trauma-informed practices. It's about building relationships with students. It's about meeting kids where they are when they come into the buildings. Day 2 is about how we safely support students who are escalated, and how we can keep staff members safe and how we can keep students safe. No, I don't want to do that. Let me scroll back here, sorry. This is my first time using Canva. I don't know if any of you all are familiar with it. So just bear with me as I kind of work through some of the details here. So this is our seclusion and restraint policy. I listed it here at the top, the name of the actual seclusion and restraint policy. This is our board adopted policy. It is adopted from our state guidelines. So everything that we have in place is definitely a part of what our state asks us to do. This is just to, share that restraint and seclusion is not a means of punishment. It's not something that we use for convenience. It really is about making sure that students are safe when they are in an imminent risk of physical harm to themselves or others. So we never address student behavior by a seclusion or putting hands on children unless it is an imminent threat to themselves or other people. And then we use the MANT process to support our students who are in crisis that may need some redirection and some support from our staff. So here is the actual link, and when we're done with this, I'm going to post the slides on our website so that you're able to access all of the links. They should be active and live for you. You can go to our website and find the section under administration, and then go to school board, and then go to board docs. When you get to board docs, if you just search C400-R, that's our district plan. It's like a 6-page document, so I didn't try to force all of that information onto this page, but it goes through all of the things that we have to do in the event that a student is in seclusion or is in a restraint. Parent notification processes, how we document a seclusion or restraint, the process for documentation, when we report to the state, like having a nurse, make sure that they're a part of the process, how we debrief with our staff, things that we can do different moving forward so we don't reach a point of crisis or escalation. So you can follow this link and jot it down if you want, and visit that board policy for all the information on the ins and outs on their policies and procedures and definitions regarding seclusion and restraint. As we're going along, feel free, like I said, to make sure that you're putting questions in the chat, and then Stephanie will make sure that she's sharing those questions out with me as well, so I can address those. So something that's really important, and if you've been around Plainfield for any amount of time, you've probably learned that we're a district that really supports a culture of safety. We have SROs in all of our buildings, which is pretty unheard of in a district our size throughout the country, that we have the amount of support from our town and our community to help us make sure that we have our student resource officers as part of our education process. But there's also a lot of other things that we do to help support safety in our buildings and really cultivate this culture of safety. We have some programs that are called Stop It, which is about see something, say something, bullying, report it. It gives access to teachers, community members, kids to report things that they're seeing that make them feel unsafe. And then our staff is able to address that through the app called Stop It. And I'll have a slide in just a second that will share more about that. Again, I mentioned see something, say something. This is something that we really are pushing on all of our staff members, our volunteers, our outside providers, people who are in our buildings. We really want to encourage the empowerment of people to share what they see in our buildings. And sometimes I think people have a tendency to say that's not, not my problem or not my business, and I don't want to get involved. But we really need to make sure that all the people in our buildings know what safe practices are. And if they see something that's unsafe, that they feel empowered to talk to an administrator, talk to a teacher, tell someone what they're seeing, so that we can address it the first time, we can address it immediately, and not learn about things later on down the road, or things that have already been habit or perpetuated in our school setting. We are mandatory reporters, and so we'll have some information about what that means for our students and for our staff members. We do make sure that we provide staff training to our outside providers, but also to our teachers and our SROs. And then what our standard response protocol is in the event of a true emergency within our buildings. So Stop It can be accessed through our district website. It is on the top right-hand side of the page. When you go to our website, you can click it, and then you are able to submit a form that gathers information about the event that you saw that you feel like needs to be communicated to administrators. Students also, like I mentioned, have access to Stop It. They are able to support themselves and support their other students just by entering and submitting. It is something that administrators will sometimes follow up on, like, I'd like to talk to you more. Can we have an interview or have a meeting where you share some more details so that we can make sure that we're keeping kids safe in our school district? You can go here at any time and report those concerns, and that information is immediately communicated to the school district. Other things that we do to support our students, not just within the school setting, but to support them through technology. We have lots of programs. You all may be familiar with some of these filters and things that we have in place to make sure that our students are safe. Lightspeed is our main filter. It makes sure that we address classroom management. It gives control over digital classrooms to our teachers. So our teachers are able to see what their students are working on at a glance. So if a student has their Chromebook out and they are engaged in online learning, This app allows us to see exactly what they're accessing on the web and make sure that they're focused on the content that they're supposed to be engaging in, and not going to websites that are off topic or are inappropriate for the school setting. Our light speed filter also works to block inappropriate and harmful sites, images, and videos without over blocking. So that's always a balance of making sure that we can give students the resources that they need, but also make sure that we're filtering out the content that's not appropriate for our students. This was a specific question by one of the individuals who submitted questions, wanting to know what kind of technology filters that we provided for our students to help keep them safe. The Silence Protect is an AI-based platform. It blocks cyber attacks from the district, so it prevents us from being shut down by hackers. And then Gaggle. So Gaggle is also a machine learning technology, and it flags content that are concerning to the school or to the student. In severe instances or situations regarding mental health or safety, an administrator is immediately appointed and contacted, and this is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if we have a student that's texting information that might be related to self-harm, we will get an email right away, or a notification or a phone call right away that a student is engaging in language through their personal email account or their website that's connected to us, that may lead us to believe that they're in danger for self-harm. And then we can start reaching out to community members and to the family to notify that the student is at risk at that moment. So that's another, Gaggle is another one of our features that we have in place that helps keep our students safe around the clock. So this is our standard response protocol. You all have you may have seen this information relayed at building level safety meetings. This is on the left is a graphic that you'll see in our buildings, in our classrooms. It's part of our district culture. We adopted this standard response protocol to make sure that our entire district is speaking the same language, and that we're teaching kids the same kind of terms to help understand what to do in an emergency. So we use phrases like hold, secure, we use lockdown, evacuate, and shelter as terms. There are standard response protocol videos that are created by our district administrators, and they go through each one of these actions and what the appropriate student and staff responses to each one of these actions. So we show these on the first day of school. They are differentiated in content and in language based on the grade level that the student is in. So our pre-K through second grade have a different experience than our third graders through our 12th graders. When thinking about our students who are receiving a more significant supports or have higher support needs, a lot of the standard response protocol falls to the adults, and the adults that we've designated to help support those students in programs within our district. So we still teach the standard response protocols throughout our district and along our entire continuum of services, but we just recognize that the level of understanding and comprehension is really different for individuals along our entire continuum of services. So we make sure that our staff members understand how to support our needs with support the needs of students with more significant support needs, and what their role is in making sure that those students remain safe in the event of a true emergency. Part of that falls on our emergency plans. So if we do have a student that has more significant support needs, then we do have emergency plans that are in place. Those are individualized plans for students. We share those with all of the appropriate team members. The emergency plans really indicate what that student needs in a moment of crisis or in a moment of a true emergency. It shares within that document, who the student is, what adults are assigned to that student for support during a crisis, where students go, how we evacuate that student from a building, and other pertinent information like hospital preferences are listed on the emergency plans, the specific emergency contact information. If there's a student that is a part of a family who is a multi-language learner, we make sure that we indicate that on the emergency evacuation plan. So that's something that we have in place for our students with more significant support needs who aren't necessarily able to follow strictly the guidelines of our standard response protocol. So within our buildings, we do have staff members who are designated to go to specific locations. All of our buildings follow the same process for shelter in place, for a lockdown, for an evacuate. So even our students with the most significant support needs, there are sight lines within their classrooms. The staff members know what to do in the case of an emergency, and then our building staff know where to go. Something that I think is really great is that we partner with the town and we partner with our police department and our fire department to make sure that all of our staff members are really trained in how to safely move and evacuate students in the instance of a true emergency. They come to our buildings and they practice with us. They practice on the right way to, transfer a student into, a transport chair to make sure they get downstairs if the emergency happens on a second level in our building. They practice the protocol of getting students out of the building, and which students do we need to make sure remain safe inside, and which students are able to evacuate safely without additional staff members. So, thinking about that level and that continuum of services, we just have great resources in our town, police department, fire department, and training our staff members. Also, our physical therapists are a big part of this as well. They're reaching out and making those initial contacts. And then our students who have medical needs, we also have healthcare plans for. So students with more significant medical needs have the healthcare plan that define what exactly the student needs as far as health and safety and medication, what to take in the event of a true emergency, what medications, who to contact, what particular hospital again that students need to access. So we do have these two layers of the emergency plan and the healthcare plans. They're not necessarily a part of our individualized education process, meaning that there's not a place in the IEP to put this information. These are district created separate documents for our students, but we do upload them into the system. So anybody that has access to the IEP on the school side can look at the evacuation plans and the healthcare plans. And then also we share them with our school administration, our teachers of record, anybody it's pertinent to have that information within the building. Does anybody have questions on how we implement that standard response protocol within our district? I got a lot of questions about this. All right, moving on. So mandatory reporting, if you're not familiar with mandatory reporting, there is a law in Indiana. It's listed here on the left. It's IC 31335-1, and it requires anyone who suspects child abuse or neglect to report to the authorities. So any child care worker or youth serving program is required to report any suspected abuse or neglect. Again, this is part of our culture of see something, say something in our district. We provide this training to our substitute teachers, to our instructional assistants, to our staff, our administrators, everyone all the way up through our district administrators are trained on this every single year. We need to make sure that we are quickly reporting. We're not waiting. We're not holding on to suspicions of abuse or neglect, and that we're reporting to DCS anything that we feel like is suspicious behavior or that we might have suspicions of abuse or neglect. There is a law that says that if we fail to report that, that there are law repercussions. It's a Class B misdemeanor if we don't report. So we kind of drill this home and also empower people to make sure that they are reporting and they're working with their administrators. But if they can't get their administrator in that moment, or they can't get their team leader in that moment, and they still feel like I really need to report this, we empower them to call the hotline and make a report. Once we call the hotline, someone will answer, and then we report just the facts. Like, these are the things that we know, these are the things that we're concerned about. They take all of the information, and then as a school district, we've done our job. Our job isn't to investigate the allegations of abuse or neglect. We leave that up to our Department of Child Services, and they conduct the investigation. Sometimes they'll tell us, hey, we're going to screen this out. Thank you for reporting it. We don't feel like this is enough information for us to investigate. And then sometimes they say, we're going to push this forward, and they let us know that they're going to, investigate this further. And then sometimes we don't get an answer either way. So there's often times where the school report and we don't know exactly which direction DCS is going to take. A lot of times we're reporting things, we'll report on ourselves too. If a student gets injured at school, if a student is injured as a result of staff trying to intervene in a crisis, we will call DCS, and it's our standard to make sure that we are reporting those incidents to them as well, and they do the investigation. We've had DCS come out and investigate our premises and our programs before as a result of self-reporting, and we just are as transparent as we can be with them. Like, we want them to come in and we want them to be a part of the process and to support students and families and our school district. Does anybody have any questions about mandatory reporting and what that means? Okay. So as far as staff training, just wanted to let everybody know that any staff member who is working with a student in the building requires an approved criminal history check. And then also we do a DCS check as well. So it's a two-pronged check. It takes a little bit of time to get all of the information back. We use a company called Safe Hiring Solutions to help support us through the background check process. We have a whole process in place with our Human Resources Department to let us know when those applicants have submitted their background checks and their DCS checks. And we also go back to every state that the individual has lived in, and then we get the information from each individual state's Department of Child Services to make sure that no stone goes unturned. These background checks are updated every 5 years per our state guideline, and then our superintendent has the final say in whether not an applicant's background check is approved through the district. So if there's a question on a background check, that gets escalated to the superintendent, and he handles all of that information. As far as training for our school resource officers, we had a meeting this July, at the end of July, the 31st, and we met with all of them. We have 9, I think, resource officers in our district, 1 in every building, and then there's a sub and also an officer who oversees all of the school-based police officers that are in our building. During that meeting, we really just wanted to talk about what emergency responses were, things that happened in our district during the previous year, things that we need to get better at, things that are going really well, interesting or unique situations that come up unexpected. We really wanted to make sure that the staff members understood what their role was, and then also what our school resource officer's role was during a crisis event. So let's imagine that we have a student that's escalated and acting out in a physically aggressive way. How do our school resource officers respond? The answer to that is that they can be supportive in the environment. They watch, they listen, they might turn on their body camera, but it's up to our trained staff to intervene in a way that we feel like is the safest way. So we're not expecting our school resource officers to put hands on kids, kids with special needs, kids with disabilities, kids with emotional support needs. That's up to us, and we want to be their trusted individuals to help work through that process with them. We also had some questions from our SROs about special transportation calls. So what happens if a student is on a bus and they are having a medical crisis, or there's a behavioral crisis that's on the bus, and who responds to that, and how we respond as a school district, how we respond as a town. And a lot of great conversation about what procedures are in place, who to alert, in the event of, an emergency on the bus, who will, go to the site, how we're going to support each other and collaborate to make sure that we are meeting the needs of students riding our special transportation buses. We also gave them a list of all of our special transportation bus numbers so they would be able to easily identify them out in the community. We talked about developing relationships with all of our students, specifically with our students receiving special education support needs, our higher support needs students. We really wanted to make sure that we kind of hammered home that we want our schools and our students to feel like our SROs are a part of the community, they're a resource, that they're safe people to report to, that kids aren't scared of them, that they don't know them. So we really hammered home the idea of developing relationships with our students and how important it is for them to spend time, not just in an official capacity and monitoring the premises and making sure our schools are safe on the inside, but that social emotional importance of relationship buildings to help our students feel safe and to empower our students to talk to them and to rely on them as a comfortable resource in our school district. We do have some outside providers that work within our district. So we have some private duty nurses that work in our district. So these are Medicaid or insurance provided nurses for our students. And then we also have several outside providers who are working within our school district who are providing ABA support. So again, this is something that is a parent provided resource. We still do all the background checks. We do lots of training with these folks, but they are working alongside schools to support individuals within our school setting. So we have several. Commons provides some mental health supports for our students as an outside provider. Daymar, Grateful Care, Integrity, Piece by Piece, and Foundations are all agencies that we have a memorandum of understanding. They're board approved MOUs. We do that background vetting process. And then we did meet in August, just last week, and we met with these providers and we did a very similar exercise that we went through with the SROs, where we just really made sure that they understood the role of supporting students in our buildings, who communicates things with parents, what does this mean for curriculum and instruction within our school district, and then also spent a big chunk of time during that meeting just talking about empowering our staff members who even, they're an outside provider, you're a vendor coming in and working with our school district, but the importance of making sure that we share information that is concerning with our administrators, with our teachers, with our staff members. There is much a part of a mandatory reporting process as anybody else in the building, that they are also empowered and part of that culture of see something, say something. So you don't hold that in. It is your responsibility to share. It is your responsibility to support us and making sure that they felt comfortable and knowing what their role is for that. So we had that meeting recently. It went really well, good attendance with all of our outside providers. And then as far as other staff trainings that we provide, we have a new instructional assistant training that happens 2 times a year. We go through all of the nuts and bolts of what it means to be an instructional assistant. We talk about mandatory reporting. We talk about instructional strategies. We move through a variety of topics. So we do that 2 times a year. That's a half-day training for instructional assistants. We have a program that's called Safe Schools, and that is a digital platform that teachers log into, staff members, administrators, district administrators, custodians, our folks that work in our cafeterias all have to participate in the Safe Schools trainings. And there's like 12, I think, trainings that the district goes through. It supports instruction in behavior intervention and gang violence and CPR and all these topics on school safety. So that's monitored by our technology department. We provide our instructional assistants and our support staff with an additional day at the start of the school year to make sure they have plenty of time and opportunity to engage with the Safe Schools trainings. You have to take a test at the end of each one of the courses and pass it with a certain percentage, or you have to retake it. So that's another layer of just staff training that we provide for our staff and the folks working in our buildings. We also have a PAR training. PAR is an acronym for Public Agency Representative. So folks that are participating in the case conference process, usually counselors, principals, assistant principals, other administrators that might be a part of that case conference process, and what to expect throughout the case conference, what their role is, and how to engage in our families in a productive way through the case conference committee process. We provide MANT training. I mentioned that at the very beginning of this meeting, making sure that the appropriate individuals that are part of our crisis teams are MANT trained. I also mentioned earlier that it is a 2-day training, so it is training intensive, but we feel like there are other programs out there that do a quicker job of training our staff, but it was really important that we have a robust training in place for our staff. And we feel like, we've used other products in the past, and this one is just by far, a better product for us. 504 training. So if there's a student who's accessing a 504, we provide that training to our staff members. And then also over the summer, we had what we called QuakerCon, and all of our staff members volunteered, not all of them, but about 15 staff members volunteered to provide professional development on things that were niche topics for them. And then we invited the rest of the district to come and participate in these sessions. And it was one day, and we had a really great turnout. One of the specific topics that were addressed was our behavior intervention. We also had some collaboration with our occupational therapists who talked about sensory instruction and how we can incorporate sensory materials and address sensory needs for students throughout the day. So staff got a good opportunity to get some instruction through QuakerCon over the summer. And then also we held compliance training, and it's coming up next week. Compliance training just means dotting the I's and crossing the T's as far as special education is concerned. What are the legal rights of our parents? How are we meeting our parents' needs? What is our obligation as a school district regarding a free, appropriate public education? What things do we need to make sure that we're offering our families? How we're supportive through the entire case conference committee process. And so this is a yearly training. And then after we do our compliance training every month, twice a month, we have what's called an IEP Academy, where we meet with our special education teachers and give them instruction in all things IEP compliance. It's a 20-minute session. There's one in the morning, there's one in the afternoon. The teachers can log in, and Mr. Toby and I provide a really direct instruction in a multitude of topics that are related to special education services. So that's just a little bit about the training that we provide our staff members, knowing that well-trained and well-prepared staff are going to better support our individuals receiving special services and making sure that we have the right supportive environment to meet the needs of all of our kids. So cameras, this was another topic that, I wanted to make sure that we brought up and that we addressed. We do have cameras that are being used in various capacities throughout the district. The vast majority of the cameras that are activated or used within our district are for internal purposes only. That information is not often shared out with the community at large. There are very specific situations where we can redact other students and not worry about FERPA violations, but and we'll share camera footage with families. We never release that via like an email. We always ask our families to come in and view those videos with us if they have a need to view the camera footage in any particular situation. So we will share that way. We do have external cameras that are monitoring the perimeters of our building and just making sure that we're keeping the outside of our environment safe. But then we also have internal cameras. So we have them in hallways, common areas, in our conference rooms, in our office areas. All of our self-contained special education classrooms have cameras in a multitude of locations. So not just one, but cameras in lots of areas. Any classroom that has a seclusion room as a part of their programming, There is a camera either inside the seclusion room or a camera that is focused on or in view of the seclusion room. We have cameras that are on our buses, and then also in Pride Academy. Pride Academy is our one of our most supported environments. It's considered a least restrictive environment of a 53. It supports students who have the most significant behavior needs, and because of the nature of the supportive programming that we provide, we make sure that there are cameras throughout Pride Academy, and obviously all the locations. So in any classroom environment, any hallway, any common space, we just make sure that we have the ability to monitor students and support students through the use of our camera footage. Any questions about how we use cameras? They're not always live monitored. I do want to share that. There's often times where we will have a student that is requiring, or situation that is requiring live monitoring, and staff will log into our camera system and start monitoring that situation, making sure that we are recording appropriately, that we're archiving and saving the footage appropriately. But oftentimes when we're going back, it's because we have a suspicion that something happened, or a parent concern, or a teacher concern, and then we go back and we look at the footage that has been recorded prior to that specific incident. So, you know, we don't have somebody that's just sitting in a room monitoring all the cameras throughout the district, but there is some live monitoring that happens throughout the day, just given any suspicion that we need to be looking at it live.
Beth, we did have a question in the chat box. How long do we keep those recordings?
Yeah, so I think that on average, they will delete themselves after 30 days. So if we aren't going in to archive that footage, it will eventually record over itself, or it will erase itself. So that's something that we really work on as a district, is to educate our administrators on when we need to go in and archive that footage. Once we archive it, then it's there forever until we delete it or share it, or have no concerns any longer. Did I answer that question? Yes? Okay. And then we're coming to the end here. More to come on this. We are going to have a town hall that is specifically related to how we keep our kids safe in our communities, and how our town can support our students within their lives outside of school. So AWARE is a program that helps law enforcement and first responders identify situations where a first responder might be engaging with an individual with a cognitive disability, or a developmental disability, or medical impairment. And then we also have Project Lifesaver, which is a search and rescue program. It's operated by public safety agencies, and this allows the public safety agency to identify folks who are at risk for life-threatening behaviors like wandering or elopement from the home. And so there's a tracking device that we can provide the families and the students wear that tracking device. We have the capability within our school district to monitor the battery life. We can't monitor anything else, but we can check the batteries and make sure that they're working and up to date. And we have staff members who are trained to do that. We are hopeful to have individuals from AWARE and Project Lifesaver come later in the year to speak to our families about exactly what those services are and how to engage with AWARE and Project Lifesaver moving forward. In the meantime, if you feel like you have a student, a child in your home who would benefit from AWARE or Project Lifesaver, just reach out to me and I will make sure to connect you with the right resources so you can get those services going right away and don't need to wait until later in the school year to access these free services. Stephanie did such a great job at the beginning plugging our Special Education Parent Advisory Committee, but I just wanted to share, I did send out this newsletter today with everybody. This is content created by our Special Education Parent Advisory Committee. It does list all of the future town halls, so we'll be talking about alternative diploma moving forward. We'll be talking about transition IEPs, staying safe at home. That's the February meeting that we're going to address AWARE and Project Lifesaver. And then also inviting the folks from Erskine Green to come in and talk about independent living skills for the future. All of this information is in that parent square email with the attachment that I sent out today, but then also I included on our district website on the calendar for special education events. All of these events are listed there, and the registration links are also on the website. So you can just click there and register for any of those events. I'll send out reminders ahead of time. I'm really working on using Parent Square at a district level this year. It's one of my goals to make sure that we keep all of our families informed of all the things that we have going on throughout the school year.
Beth, I just wanted to add, I did put links for both AWARE and Project Lifesaver in the chat. So if anybody is wanting those quickly, they are in there.
Thank you. And that really just leads us to the end. I am going to click on this link and maybe it will take me there and just share with everybody that we do have a special education website for the district. If you go to schools and you click over here at the district side and click on special education, it will take you here. There's just a lot of really good information that's included on the website, lots of tabs, general information, family resources, questions about IEPs and 504, and more. So if you're interested in accessing that, a lot of folks don't know that that's a resource out there. It's kind of buried in the website, but I wanted to take a minute to plug our website as well. Are there questions that I didn't address through the presentation? I tried to make sure I had a slide that addressed each one of the questions that was presented, but is there any information that I can share, or questions that you all have that I can share and answer?
I have a quick question, and I couldn't find my mute button when you were talking about like the lockdowns and the different emergency situations, but have you guys seen the kids respond to that really well? I have a third grader at Clarks Creek, and so my main concern is that they do go in lockdown where they have to shut off the lights and everything. He's not one to stay quiet.
Yeah.
He's going to have issues sitting still. I know he has that one-on-one support with, he has a therapist in there from Integrity, soon to be piece by piece. But that's a lot of kids for a certain amount of adults to try to keep secluded in the dark, away from windows, anything like that.
Yeah.
And I know in the classroom, they do have that long line of windows in the back. Do they take them to like a seclusion room or somewhere away from those windows?
Yeah, so thanks for that question, Katie. What we do every school year is we have our officers walk through, and we also have our police department come in, and we make sure that we are that we have designated a line of sight in each one of our classrooms and where that line of sight is, and then what areas in the classroom are the safest spaces for our students. And so they perform this exercise every year to make sure that each individual classroom and group of students know where to go in the event that there is a true emergency during a lockdown, and what things we're going to do for those students. So, one of the priorities being making sure that the officers know that this is a supported classroom and we need you there first, right? And so when you're responding, this is where you go, because these kiddos can't necessarily perform all the functions that are required of them. And making sure that all the adults in the building know where those areas are, the staff is trained. It really becomes an issue of how adults support kids in that moment, and making sure that we have the right number of identified individuals to support kids. For the most part, I think that our kids sadly tolerate these drills, and it's a part of their learning environment and their culture of learning. And so the drill part isn't necessarily taxing because it becomes systematic. It's something that we practice. In the event of a true emergency, I think that's going to be hit or miss for every single person that's, in that situation.
Right. And then kind of piggybacking off of that, do the SROs frequent their classroom? I know my son, it's very like stranger danger kind of thing, doesn't like people he's not comfortable around. So I didn't know if they were in there frequently to where that would be a person that if he saw them in a situation like that or a situation outside, that he'd be like, oh, that's one of my safe people.
Sure, that's a goal that I have, Katie. So, in the past, I think that it's been for our SROs, it's been very, I think it's a great relationship, but there's a lot of, we walk the halls and we monitor the cafeteria, and not necessarily that we're engaging students inside of classrooms. And so that was part of the meeting that we had this year, is how we can become more apparent to our students and identify, the SROs as safe people. Also, their uniforms and equipment can be scary. They look scary. They're, carrying things that might be intimidating. And so we want our students to identify that even if they're, firemen coming in a mask or in their uniforms, or a police officer coming in with their vest and their weapon, that those are still our safe people, right? We don't run from them, we run to them.
Beth, I just want to jump in and say thank you so much. I am going to go ahead and stop the recording now.
Sure.
So that if anybody does have a question that they want to ask privately, they can. And for those of you who may be watching the recording later, if you have specific questions, please feel free to reach out to Beth. She is a wealth of information.